All right. Well, good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Mike Olander, and we've got Ron Sikes joining us here all the way from Missouri. So I just wanted to take a couple quick minutes here and thank everybody once again for being a customer of MusicFirst, as well as spending a little bit of time here, hopefully learning a couple tips and tricks from Ron in term that you guys can take back. Uh, Typically when I go to any seminar, workshop, or conference, I always say if you can take one good idea away, that you definitely, it was time well spent. There's potentially going to be a couple things that Ron might discuss here today that isn't applicable to your implementation or your needs. But again, I guarantee you that there is going to be some nuggets of information that you're going to find beneficial. All right. So in terms of like where we're at here, I am recording the session as a reminder. So I'm asking everybody just to kind of keep your mics on mute. You can type in questions in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that. And then at the end of the day, or the end of the session rather, we'll have a little bit of Q&A time, hopefully as well. All right. So in terms of the agenda here, this was kind of what I had put in the email invitation here is we're going to kind of talk a little bit about Ron's tips and best practices about getting started with PracticeFirst, how you introduce it to students and kind of get them engaged in terms of what is the software capable of and what are some of the ways that it's going to be used with your classes. Then a review about, I call it kind of 4 different types of assignments. 3 of them are going to be practice first types of assignments. One is proficiency assignments. The second is performance preparation. 3 is generic assignments where you're kind of giving the students a little bit of choice or you're using it for differentiated learning. And then 4 down here, we talk about other types of assignments that are not necessarily in PracticeFirst, where you're either asking the students just to record themselves with audio or submitting video. So Ron might give some tips and ideas about when he utilizes these different resources and why. And then I know one of the topics that several people contact me about is talking a little bit more about ideas and workflow and best practices for how to create and upload your own notation files, whether it's a performance piece that's not currently in the catalog or some specific skill sets that you're working and developing with your students. And then at the end, again, we'll have time for Q&A. So in terms of housekeeping real quick, again, we're recording this. If you or someone else that is partnering with you in your implementation wants to get a link to the recorded webinar afterwards because you love hearing my voice and Ron's voice, just shoot me an email and we'll get that back to you, mike@musicfirst.com. Again, just to keep everything clean, please keep your cameras off and mute your microphones, and then use that chat box inside of Zoom for questions. Cool. 3 little reminders that I like to just kind of remind people of. One is that in the upper right-hand corner, whenever you are inside your MusicFirst classroom site, there's this nice little question mark icon here in the top right-hand side. That's where you can get to the user guide as well as the tutorial videos. So it's great for self-help at any time. We've also got a support team. If you have not worked with them before, they are fantastic. I call them your phone a friend option or the how do I resource. Just send them an email, support@musicfirst.com. Typically, I recommend including as many details as you can. So if you're having an error message, make sure that if you can get like a screen capture of, what does it look like on your screen, or a link to the specific assignment from your classroom so that they can track it down and help you out. And then the education management team, most of you have probably worked with me, either talked with me on the phone, via email, met at a conference. We do have a couple other folks on our team as well. So you can go to the musicfirst.com/contact us to find out who works with the schools in your area. We help with all the proposals, adding seats, getting you set up with trial access, answering initial questions, etc. Cool. All right. So before I turn things over to Ron, I'm just going to give you a couple of my Hey, I'm functionally dangerous tips and reminders here for Practice First. The first is one that I've done personally a number of times, and Ron probably has as well. When you create a task in the Music First classroom, you get to that summary page that says, hey, this is what you're going to do. Don't forget to click that Open in Practice First button so that you're actually then attaching the notation file so the students know what they're going to do. So that potentially is one of the more frequently common issues where someone might say, oh, I set this up, but the students are saying that it's not defined and they can't find it. It's most likely that that was the step in the process that was overlooked, is that Open in Practice First. The second one I like to tell people to do is, if you can teach your students how to filter and find content, and if it's something that they're going to refer back to more frequently, using that bookmark functionality. So if they just launch Practice First, you could look at the specific method books for an example. So if you use Standard of Excellence Book 1, you teach the students how to find that, and then in that filter menu caption, there's this button here that says add to favorites, and then the students will be able to look for the favorites and they can find that content again and again every time they log in. So that's a nice little functionality there. Two last things in terms of my functionally dangerous tips. One is the ability to do that generic assignment. So instead of finding a very specific piece of content saying everybody is going to play Merrily We Roll Along, you can do a generic assignment where you're giving the students a choice of what to submit. You're asking them to submit back maybe the last line of the page of the method book that they're working on that week, so that you're able to differentiate the instruction without having to create multiple tasks. So using that create generic assignment is a great, powerful tool, and one that was asked for, and really streamlines the implementations for you guys as well. And then finally, when you do create those tasks that are a specific notation file, when you've got that pop-up, when you say attach to task, there's an option in there that says show advanced options. And that's where you can go in there and set up the requirements for tempo. Do they have to play it at that particular speed, or will you allow them to submit something slower? Do you want to set it into a special mode, which is either sight reading or memorization? Memorization basically means as soon as that student hits record, notation is off screen. They're still going to be assessed on how accurate they are, but they don't get the ability to see the notation files. You can also limit the number of attempts. So if you say, hey, when you do this, you're going to get 3 different attempts, you can submit that. You can turn the cursor on or off. So those are some of the options under that advanced options. Just something to be aware of, that you do have that power and the flexibility, and to find it, it's under the See Advanced Options when you create the task. Okay. Finally, a couple things for those of you who have used the platform for more than this academic year. Here's some of the things that have been updated in terms of Practice First. Or maybe you didn't even realize this because, you know, some changes happen, and let's be real, everybody was a little bit busy and had, you know, their plate full. First is that any instrument that is a transposing instrument, the annotations in their assessment now displays the transpose instrument note names. So before, if the student played a concert C, but they were a B flat instrument, it would say incorrect note C. And now it's going to actually transpose it and show it in the student's instrument's pitch. So that was something that was added this fall. Great update that was able to be added. They also added here the ability for non-assessed recordings. So you can now upload your non-pitch percussion notation files, and the student can record themselves just like any other pitched percussion or wind instrument or string, and they can complete those assignments. Just know that the program's going to tell them, hey, 100%, but it's not actually scoring them. It's just saying that they completed it. You as the teacher goes in there and will provide the score. The other big thing that really has changed since this academic year is the amount of content that's being provided at no additional cost to the users. So we added a number of method books this summer, including the Foundation Superior Performance, Tradition of Excellence series, the Standard of Excellence series, Habits of a Successful series, all for string basics, blah, 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 more and more and more. We also added some Your Score titles. Some of you probably saw those flex assignments for the holiday series. And then right in December, we made the announcement that we're adding a number of titles from Excelsior Music Publishing as well as Bandworks. So those will continue to get added into your site. So you'll be able to see that under available content coming up here, and that will continue to grow. All right. And finally, there is just a reminder here every once in a while, hey, we're human. There are some times that notation errors come into play where you might say, whoa, hey, this isn't exactly what the actual original notation file should be. You got an error. That's fine. And we appreciate just hearing from you. So all you have to do, if you find a notation error, please email our support team. And then reference the material where you found it. Be as specific as you can, saying, hey, you know what, you've got a B natural, it's supposed to be a B flat or whatever. And let us know so that we can alert our notation gurus and get them to get in there and update that so that it's live and pushed back out for everybody. I tried to get through that as quick as I could to leave Ron as much time as possible. So again, thank you for joining us. If you need to get in touch with me, again, my email is mike@musicfirst.com. My phone number is posted up there as well. Again, really thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Ron. Ron is a fantastic guy. I've known Ron for a number of years. Actually, back in the day, I worked for Make Music, who are the people behind Smart Music and Finale. And so Ron and I kind of exchanged some communications that way. And, I got to know Ron a little bit more. And I'm thrilled to have Ron on board. He started using our platform about a year ago. He's going to be able to really kind of give you some of the tips and tricks in terms of starting out an implementation with MusicFirst and be able to answer those questions. So without any further ado, Ron Sikes, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, thanks for hanging out with us today. So Mike, at any point in this, if you feel like if you need to ask me a question or redirect, or please jump in and interrupt. So Mike talked about, I've been using MusicFirst now for about a year. And throughout that year, our world has completely changed with COVID and online learning and whatnot. And when we originally talked about it, our music education world was kind of normal, if you would. So when I started using MusicFirst, the original plan was I was going to introduce MusicFirst to only my middle school kids through the spring of last school year. And when we got back from our MMEA conference, I submitted the paperwork. We got all of the license set up for all the students and whatnot. And then I started just slowly rolling it out with the kids. So instead of coming in and saying, hey kids, here's a brand new platform, here's brand new everything, let's get after it. Like, we really kind of took our time to go into it. And I started with one class at a time. And I just kind of like introduced it like, hey kids, we're going to kind of pilot this system. And if we like it, we'll keep it. And if we don't, we'll look for something else. So if you'll help me kind of vet this, I'd greatly appreciate it. So I started like giving an assignment maybe like once a week, just to kind of just to introduce it. And I said, all right, kids, the first couple of kids that turn in their assignment, your name's going to go into a raffle or a basket for a raffle. And then I would pull a kid's name out and they would get like one a la carte item in the lunch line, which is like the dessert or whatever it was. And then that kind of motivated kids like, hey, I'll be the first one. I'll give it a try. And then through that, they'd give me feedback about how the program was working and how they enjoyed it, or there are things about it maybe that they wish were different. So we did that, a little bit at a time until finally my middle school kids were kind of, they were getting into it. And then by the end of February, we started like getting ideas that, we might be on lockdown, we might go to virtual learning, we didn't know what was going to happen. We just heard a lot of rumors about COVID and how it was going to affect the school. So immediately I went to my high school administration and said, look, I started piloting this program for the spring. My goal was to pilot and make a decision to whether or not to continue with it in the fall. I said, but with COVID coming on, I think we need to kind of take care of it. So he went ahead and started the paperwork, and then we added all of my high school kids. So by the time that COVID started and we were shut down for the fourth quarter, we had the entire music department, 6 through 12, band, choir, guitar. All of the kids were using the MusicFirst platform. And through that time, we had a lot of opportunities to kind of get to know the program and kind of get used to it and learn the ins and outs. So as Mike said, today's little clinic, seminar, workshop, whatever you want to call it, we're just going to kind of go through some of my favorites and kind of how I use it, because I do teach in a small school district. I teach in Missouri. My district has about 1,100 kids pre-K through 12. There's about 300 kids in the high school, and the music program as a whole with band and choir and everything, I think we're right at about like 175. So, and I teach, team teach along with my wife, who is the choir director. So we wanted to create kind of a platform that was usable for all the kids, band and choir and guitar. We were both kind of administrators on the site. We were both using similar lesson plans. So that way there was a lot of consistency within the music department, especially in a time where we kind of needed that consistency when we had our school shut down. So I have a outline here that I'm going to kind of briefly go over.
No,
All right. So as you can see, I teach a beginning band, a middle school band, a high school band, a jazz band, and I have a guitar class. And I thought, like, is it best to go through this and kind of show you how I use each part of the program, or maybe do I go through and kind of explain how I use it with each grade level? So I'm going to start by going like with each class and each grade level. And through that, feel free to, have your questions in the comments below, and then we can go from there. So in the beginning band, we start off with all the kids are in beginning band together. I start kids on flute, clarinet, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, percussion, and then depending on the year and depending on the students, I might start a French horn, or I might start an electric bass, which is, I did both of those this year. So I bounce back and forth between developing my own beginning band methods and then using published ones and then borrowing from others. So our beginning band class looks probably typical to others. We start the school year doing no notation reading at all. We use everything by ear. We kind of use the sound before sight method, where the students are playing by ear about half of the period, and then the other half of the period we're doing like small little music theory projects. That's where using Aurelia, a musician on the MusicFirst platform, has come in pretty handy as well. But we do the sound before sight, making sure that the kids are making characteristic sounds on their instrument and that they're getting a good sound. They've got good hand position, because if you think about a beginning band student, it's very easy to get overwhelmed, because you're saying, all right, sit up straight, back tall, feet flat on the floor, hold your instrument like that, breathe like this, look at that new form of language notation that you really can't read yet. By the way, we're on page 3, everybody all together, boom. And then you see everyone's collective heads just kind of explode because it's just overload. So we started taking like a small, step-by-step approach. I kind of followed this idea called prepare to a position to transition, where before we transition, we want to make sure that we're fully prepared. So before we get into method books and before we get into reading notation, I want to make sure that they have a firm understanding of what it means to have a good characteristic sound. So once we start reading notation, I did use the Tradition of Excellence book because it is part of the MusicFirst series or platform or whatnot. So you see the first example I have here is just Cuckoo, which was part of their band karate kind of their motivation to excel and to practice and to have their pass off lists. And that can be found, let me see if I can do this. That can be found over in PracticeFirst. As Mike stated earlier, it's important, like if you can teach the kids how to filter through this, but more importantly, using the favorites button. So it kind of brings everybody back. So I always had all the kids, if they come back to their type, make sure this says type, and then foundations. For my high school kids, I have them do foundations and save that as a favorites. And then for my beginning band kids, making sure that we went to Tradition of Excellence and they found their book and selected it and made that their favorite. That way they can practice on their own along with getting some assignments from me. I also have them over the summer. I wrote a book called Simply Scales, which is the way that I teach scales to all the kids. You know, we all learn the major scale, but it wasn't until college where my director turned me on to tetrascales or tetrachords, depending on, I've heard them said both ways. So I laid out, and I have been laying out these tetrascales for my kids to learn, because 2 tetrascales make 1 major scale. So instead of teaching the B flat major scale at one time, I'll teach the students the B flat tetrascale so that they master and memorize those 4 notes. And then we go up the circle of fifths, and then they learn the F tetrascale and they memorize that. And then if they can show me that they have both of those scales memorized, then we put them together to make 1 major scale. And then we go through all 12 major scales like that throughout the next 2 to 3 or 4 years, however long it takes to get them there. And the goal is that this Simply Scales book is kind of that bridge. We go from the very beginning, and then once they're finished with the Simply Scales book, then they're ready for their all-state scales. You know, in my case, the Missouri all-state scales. So this is part of PracticeFirst, and if you're interested in a digital copy, I have like a PDF that I have on like a Teachers Pay Teachers or a PayHip. I'm happy to share that if anyone's interested. But I do have them favorite this as well, so that we can kind of go through and have all of our materials kind of in a nice little package. So we're going to go to like Tradition of Excellence, and I guess we'll use baritone euphonium. What's nice is not only can you make assignments from here, but the kids can just kind of come in and practice. One thing that I really, really loved about MusicFirst was the fact that each one of these exercises has its own URL. So as you can see, here's Cuckoo, and here is the URL that is specific to this. And the reason why I love it so much is because I was able to click the link and then post it into our Google slide. Now this Google slide is located on the dashboard of Canvas. We use Canvas as our learning management system. But I also used this a little bit last year when we were doing Google Classroom. The idea is that, you know, all of my lesson plans and everything that we are going to work through is in one spot. So as you can see, Mondays are our virtual days. So I had kids, you know, they can just come to Canvas, click that link, and then they do their Monday practice. Now, not everything that we do in class is graded or uses the assessment tool. Sometimes I just want the kids to play and practice and follow along. that's why these links are so important for me, because right now we have, I think about 12% of our population are virtual kids, and they're home 100%. The other kids are in class, and we meet with them face to face Tuesday through Fridays. And so the way that I tried to make sure that my virtual kids were in the same place, or at least felt like they were still part of our class, was by putting everything in this Google slide and then linking everything that we do. So as you can see, this was a beginning, my beginning band class. And on this particular Tuesday, on November 3rd, I suppose, we would work on Half Note Rock and Steppin' and Cuckoo, and I would just click one link at a time. And then I would send an email to the kids that were virtually at home stating, hey guys, the agenda is on there. You can play along with us, or at least, you can keep up with, so that you know what we're doing. We didn't do any scales. The dotted halves, this was part of Sight Reading Factory. So that link goes to there. Now, I must admit that my 6th grade band was not doing long tones 1A from the superior, or the foundations, the blue book. They weren't doing that. I just did this as kind of a carryover from my high school kids. So but each one I had a warm up, a rhythm of the day, whatever scales we were working on, and then the repertoire. And then we just went, day by day. And then at the end, when it was time for Cuckoo, instead of making it difficult for them to find the assignment, because before Canvas and before Google Classroom, the kids would just log into MusicFirst and they could, immediately find out what assignments that they had due. However, I started really feeling bad for our students, because our school was like, well, some teachers were using Google Classroom, some teachers were using Canvas. I was using Canvas and MusicFirst. So if a kid has 5 or 6, 7 teachers, different teachers throughout the day, they might have had like 2 or 3 different platforms, 2 or 3 different ways of how to get their assignment, so on and so forth. And I could just see the kids kind of stress out for no reason at all, or for what appears to be didn't have to. So I thought, well, how can I make this easier for them? And that's another reason why I loved the MusicFirst, the independent URLs for each exercise, because I could just click that link and it would take me to, if they have an assignment on Cuckoo. Now, I am logged in as a teacher, so you're going to see from the teacher side, not the student side. But once they click that link, that takes them straight to their assignment, so they don't have to click and fish around for trying to figure out what they need to get finished. So let's go back to Tradition of Excellence. Along with using the Tradition of Excellence and the material and the Simply Scales and all of the resources that come with MusicFirst, I also create a ton of material to go with this. I will start off with like Alpha Overture, which is a part of the Bellwin beginning band series. Each year they would release almost like, here's your first concert in a box, and it had like 4 different short little pieces, and the short little pieces would have like 4 different contrasting styles, right? Something that was kind of like a lyrical thing, something that was kind of a fanfare or overture, something that was kind of like a novelty pop rock thing. So we were using Alpha Overture, which is from one of those beginning themes, or beginning packets. So I went through the score and found each individual part. Since it is a beginning band piece, those are only arranged for 3 and 4 parts to begin with. So again, going back to that idea of preparing the kids to a position to transition, I didn't want to just simply give them a piece of music out of the box and say, all right, kids, let's get after it. Because up until this point, they've been used to using unison lines from their method books or from materials that I give them. So if I were to give them a brand new piece of music that has harmony, and they start hearing that their part is different than their part, even if they're really solid rhythm readers, my experience says that they're still going to be distracted, and they're going to feel like they're wrong when they're playing against someone else. So I designed like these theme sheets. I've seen them called unison preps, but basically I go through the part and go through the score and say, all right, what is the flute player playing? What is the clarinet player playing? And then I take all that material and load it into Finale. And of course, you can use any notation software that you choose. But I've been using Finale for 20 some odd years, and I'm very comfortable with it. So as you can see, I labeled 1A, 9A. So this is measure 1, and then goes for the first 8 measures. This is 9A, 17A, and that covers it. And then all the other pieces will kind of fall in line. So now you've got 1B, which if I'm not mistaken is the clarinet part. And then you've got 9B and then 17B again. When we get to the C's, I believe it might be an alto part and a French horn part. And then finally, when you get to the D's, you are now with the trombones and low brass. So when I give it to them, you see Alpha Overture. Everything is in Finale right now. Here's how the parts look. And I'm going to do a demonstration a little bit later, but this is where I take the material from here, use the export music XML file, and then turn it into some of the material that I use for PracticeFirst. So now that I'm in PracticeFirst again, I'm going to go back and come to kind of this front page. Here is your available content, which is what we've been discussing so far. Premium content, you can ask Mike more about that a little bit later. Favorite content, this is the part where I had the kids favorite their, the stuff that we're working on. But here is my exercises. My exercises, here is all of the notation that I have put in, exported through Music XML, and then imported into PracticeFirst, so that and then used for assignments for kids to work. So I will start with the Star-Spangled Banner, because the Star-Spangled Banner, if you click it, I did a completely different arrangement because with COVID, kids, being virtual and not being able to perform or play, I did an arrangement of Star-Spangled Banner that that would still feel and sound full, even though we had limited numbers. So my version of the Star-Spangled Banner can be played by really 2. It's written for 3, but it can be played with 2 kids, and it would sound pretty good. So, but anyway, when I want to check on that, I can go through and put that in there, and then the kids can practice their part from the material that I created for them. Next, you'll see the Star-Spangled Banner, next you'll see the fight song. So this is our fight song was composed, like I wrote the fight song when our high school first opened 12 years ago, I believe at this point. And so again, I had this in Finale, I had this in notation, and at the very beginning of the year, I used this in PracticeFirst, so to make sure that the kids were practicing and playing along. But then also when I create an assignment, this is one of the pieces of music that needs to be memorized as soon as possible, because we play the fight song a lot. And if our football team's winning, we play it a ton. And if they're not winning, we don't play it as much, but it's still handy to have memorized. So here's our fight song. Again, very specific to our high school kids. And plus, since it's in here, I can also share it with the middle schoolers so they can get a start. So somewhere in the fourth quarter this year, my 8th graders, I'm going to share that with them so they can kind of get ahead of the game for next fall. In addition to Fight Blue Jays Fight, I also did a PracticeFirst simple exercise just for my guitar class, and it worked great. You know, they logged in, they clicked record, they played along. It showed them what notes were right, what notes weren't, and it really worked out really well. Sometimes people think that the guitar class is kind of left out of this, or even a recorder class, and that's just simply not true. Those instruments can yield the benefits of this program as well. Then I took, let's take our middle school band. We had all district auditions, and this year a gentleman wrote our audition material, and he wrote it in 6 chunks, a theme with 5 different variations. So as each kid got above a 95% on each exercise, I assigned the next one and the next one, and they just eventually worked up, because these variations get more difficult as the numbers go up. I was also able to make sure that the scales for our middle school kids were exactly the way that they'll see them for auditions. And then double backing to our beginning band, after we had worked on Alpha Overture and some of the stuff from the book, I did a quick arrangement of Jingle Bells. That's not even, I wouldn't call it a part song at all. I arranged it where all of the kids were playing unison from 5 through 22. And then once at 22 happened, I just kind of broke up the melody, so each of the sections had like a little solo. And then we came back around again and then finished out the song. This was important because right before Thanksgiving, our district went to red and shut everything down. So this was a way for kids to kind of continue practicing their jingle bells while within this arrangement, while they were still away from the band. And then I was able to post some additional sound files to kind of help them out with that. And then take a look at, this will be the last one I think we talk about for a little while. And it was Santa Claus is Coming to Town. So again, this was one of those songs that we didn't have a lot of time to put together with our high school band. We had planned on participating in a Christmas parade until the Christmas parade was canceled, but I knew we were shutting down for because of our red schedule, because of COVID exposures, and we were still kind of in the process of learning this song. And not only was the band starting to sound good, but they didn't quite have it memorized. And for the parade, I recommended that all the kids memorize their music, because this particular parade that we participate in happens at night. So it starts at 7, so it's really dark, and not every spot of the street is well lit. So it's like, you know, if you have it memorized, then you won't have to worry about lights, and you won't have to worry about seeing your lyre. So as Mike mentioned earlier in the introduction, not only can you use PracticeFirst to assess kids on how they're playing, but you can also use it to assess their memorization. And one thing that I was very late to the game, and I didn't discover until recently, was when you make an assignment in PracticeFirst, you do not have to assign this entire piece of music. All right, you can use the sections feature like I have here, and you can just assign certain sections. So throughout the course of the week, I had two sections per week that needed to be memorized. So I used the exact same file, the exact same XML. It was already loaded in, and I just went in and said, all right, guys, from, let's see, section number 1, I would like you to have 24 to 28 memorized, and then 16 to 24, and just the introduction. And anyway, so I created like 4 separate assignments from this one, and I was able to break down the pieces in smaller. Again, preparing the kids to a position to transition so that they're successful, and trying to eliminate or at least reduce any amount of stress that they might have from all of this.
Hey, Ron, since you're there, would you mind just showing how easy it is to add a section?
Sure. So let's see here. Right now I'm going to mark. So I click the sections button right here, hit mark a new section. And from here, it's just simple as clicking and dragging. And the students have also learned to do this in their practicing as well, like when they're just working on a loop or working on a small section. But making the sections is super easy. Click and drag. And then come back to your sections, give it a name. Hit save. And then now when it comes time for Mike, we can just play that part. So again, super simple, super quick, and super valuable. Again, this was one of those, I wouldn't say hidden, but it sure wasn't obvious to me to start with. And then once I started tinkering around with it and started getting comfortable with it, and that's kind of how I do a little bit of everything. Like I just wanted to kind of get out of the box and say, all right, let's hit play, rewind, record. Let's focus on what these buttons do. Now we can kind of go down and start learning some of the other features that can be used. And then again, I came across the sections and I thought, man, this is cool, because let me show you why I learned it. Because had I known this one before, when I did my all district music, all of that would have been one file. And I would have done assignments in chunks, as opposed to me putting all of that in Finale and chunking it up in 6 sections. So by learning the trick of the sections and only giving assignments on the sections, it really saved me a ton of time in preparation for lessons. And let's see, we covered Simply Scales. Again, Simply Scales is like how I teach scales from the beginning through high school. And then once they're finished with Simply Scales, they can move on to their all state scales, which that is another thing that's been growing by leaps and bounds. I don't know if Mike, you have that number on hand, but how many all state scales are now listed into MusicFirst?
I don't have an exact number. Like you said, though, I know that is a growing number as well. You can see look at that, there's 21.
Yeah, half the country has their all states in here, and it's a fantastic resource again, because the beauty of MusicFirst is it is so customizable that I would start off and create an additional class just for my kids auditioning for all state. And then I would just give them additional, additional assignments to get them prepared. And in MusicFirst, you can do it 2 ways. You can create an additional class and just load all of those kids into that one class, or you can go in and create specific groups within your own class, which I don't know if we'll have time to get to today, but that's also been super helpful. And we talked about literature. Tell you what I'd like to do is do an actual demonstration of how I go from like the whole process, right? And this was, and the example that I'm going to use is going to be for the Kansas City Riff scale, which I don't know how far and wide the scale is used, or if I've never heard it used outside of like my bubble of jazz musicians. So I don't know if this is a common thing that I haven't connected the dots to, or is it just like my small knit group of musicians and mentors that tend to use this. But it's different than a blues scale. It's different than a major scale. And it is a great scale to start a beginning improviser on in jazz band. It uses the scale degrees 5, 6, 1, 2, flat 3, and then you come right back down. So it's kind of like a modified pentatonic, only it sounds way hipper. And as long as you're within a dominant 7th chord, and you're using these notes, you can't hit a wrong note. So to prepare kids to transition from soloing into like acknowledging chord changes, I always use this as like a first scale that I teach within jazz band. So here is going to be the project or the goal. So real quick, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to clear it. Oh. All right, so literally we're starting from scratch, and I'm going to show you kind of like my process of going from nothing into an assignment that can be used in PracticeFirst. As I stated, I'm going to go down and use guitar, or I'll use vibes. All right, so we're going to do this in the key of B flat. So if I'm going to use the fifth scale degree, we're going to start on F, then 6, then 1, then 2, flat 3, 2, 1, erase that note because I don't want that one, 6, and then 5. All right. So I also want the kids to start recognizing chord changes. So I will put a B flat 7 right there. Oh, and then I deleted it because I'm getting in a hurry. And I need to slow down. B flat. B flat 7. All right. And now I'm going to go and just simply control copy, paste, 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 paste. Control V all the way down. Obviously, I don't like that range, so I'm going to bring that down to there. The range overall works for me. If I have a younger alto, maybe I'll take that down. No, I won't. I want it right there. So here is our file. All right, this is what I want the kids to work on. This is the scale I want them to learn. And the goal is I want them to have the scale completely memorized. Why? Because if we memorize our scale, then music kind of becomes more fun to improvise over. And then also it's not that large of a scale anyway. So I'm going to go over to File, and I'm going to export this file as a music XML. And it's going to ask me what do I want to call it. I'll just call it Kansas City riff scale, and I'll call it XML. Now that file is on my other screen. So at this point, there is one step that I have found to be beneficial. And that is after I do my work in finale, I'll go ahead and get out of here. I will I have a lot of windows open. I will go to Musescore. Musescore is a free notation software. A lot of people love it. I haven't spent a lot of time with it, but so far it's pretty cool. What I usually do is I always bring in my XML from Finale into Musescore. Some might say, is that double work? Maybe, maybe not. But what I try to do is Musescore tends to read the XML, and this is what it looks. So if I were to import my Finale file of XML straight into PracticeFirst, I would have all of these expressions, and then therefore it would create a giant gap in reading that would make it makes it kind of difficult to read. I don't know why it does it that way, but it's been my experience. So I just throw it in Musescore real fast, and I will just click the 120 and then just delete it. And as you can see, it's changing the overall format of the file, which is fine by me. All right, and that's pretty much it. Right now, that looks pretty good. I'm pretty tickled with it. So I'm going to go over to File, and I am going to save. Now it's going to ask me, notice that it's now going to change the file to the .mscz file, which is good because PracticeFirst loves this format. Okay, so that's what I want to do. So I'm going to hit save. And now that Musescore file is on my desktop. I'm going to get rid of this. All right, and now I'm logged in as me. I'm going to go up to my software, and I'm going to go to PracticeFirst. All right, it shows me where I was at the last time, but right here under actions, I want to create my own exercise. And when I create my own exercise, do I want to create an audio only exercise? Not this time. I want to load a score. That score that I load, I'm looking straight for that Musescore right there. So I'm going to click open. What tempo do I want this at? Now I can change this at any point if I'm going to create assignment, but as a default, I always put 90. And then I go through and make sure that everything kind of looks all right. I've got the full score, which sometimes I leave in, sometimes I take out. It's no big deal because when I give an assignment to the kids, they're going to select their instrument anyway. So I'm going to hit continue. And right now it is loading.
One point there, Ron, that reminds me, another common thing that beginner teachers will, using PracticeFirst will mention is, I assigned this and a student opens it up and there's no record button. They can't do it. The reminder is in that top right-hand corner, if what the notation file has more than one part, that student needs to pick their part to display just their notation so that PracticeFirst knows, hey, when they're recording, what are we listening for? What am I going to be assessing you against? So just make sure that if the student says they don't see that record function on their task, that they've picked their part from that top drop down.
I've also had students look at the score and say, my part's not there. I only see everyone's part. And then we teach them how to find that as well. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep the title, although I would make it fancy. And then default score of 90. I can put in me being the author if I choose to, so on and so forth. Right now, I'm just going to click save. And now I have a file that's now in PracticeFirst. And if I hit play, all right, I have a piano sound, which I'm fine with. But again, the students come over here because sometimes the default will be this, and this will overwhelm kids. So it might not hurt to walk them through the first time to make sure that they're on the right spot. And then go over and say, all right, now find your instrument. And now it's time to go ahead and get started. So now the beauty of it is I'm going to now double back and go to my exercises. And you're going to see that's now part of my library of exercises that I've created. And this will stay with me forever. If I do this again next year, I don't have to recreate that finale file or anything else. It's now loaded in here, which is super helpful. All right, so now I've got the file in. I'm going to go ahead and create an assignment. So as you can see, I've got all of our entire music program is right here. Beginning band, concert band, 6th grade music, our middle school choir, jazz band, choir, so on and so forth, guitar. I set up a test class to do experiments on. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here to add, and I'm going to add a task. I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to call it that Kansas City risk scale. I can make this part of a larger unit, and sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't. I just do one assignment at a time. And then it's going to ask the task type. Do I want MusicFirst software or do I want to do these others? And I am going to use MusicFirst because I am going to use PracticeFirst. All right, I'm going to make the due date, goodness, I don't know, how about Friday? Visible to all students or assigned to one class. This is what I alluded to earlier. you can make different sections of your group, different groups, and just assign it. This is perfect for differentiating learning. My jazz band, for example, has seniors and freshmen, kids that have been in jazz band for 4 years versus kids who just started this year. So I can set up different grades and say, look, 9th graders, you do the Kansas City scale. 10th graders, you do the dominant 7th scale. 11th graders, you do this scale, so on and so forth, and differentiate your learning so that every kid can kind of move at their pace. Add to the grade book. I'm going to click on it, and I'm just going to give it 10 points. And now that I've given it 10 points, I'm going to hit create task. Now, beware. Most beginning PracticeFirst users will look at this and say, hey guys, I am finished. Please go complete your assignment. However, there's an important feature that you can't overlook, and that is we haven't attached anything to this assignment yet. So this is just kind of like a shell, right? And we have to fill it in. So always go to open and PracticeFirst. This is where PracticeFirst opens up the software, and I get to go in and figure out exactly what I want to add to that assignment. Well, I said it was going to be the Kansas City Riff Scale, and that's what I completed. So I have to go to My Exercises. And I'm going to go to that Kansas City Riff Scale right there. And here we are. It looks like it did last time I saw it. So I'm going to come over here and click Assign to Student. It's going to ask me some questions. Obviously, I want the kids to select their own part. So I can add in any comments. Good luck. Show advanced options. All right. Now, grading style. Do you want it to be easy, medium, or hard? I usually stick around medium unless I'm in beginning band, and then I'll do easy for a little while until I can bridge them. Tempo goal, 100% of what I would like them to play. Play mode. I highly recommend always selecting with metronome. I've had students in the past that if they put in the free mode, it will follow them. So if they slow down, so does PracticeFirst and so on. And then the kids, they kind of get turned around. So, and I don't usually do it with the backing track. I do it with the metronome, especially if you're creating your own content. With metronome, make sure it's selected. All right. And then I'm going to scroll down. Attempts. Right now, if I were making this a final, maybe I would limit the attempts. But most of the time, I have it unlimited because if they keep doing it, then they're practicing. And that's what we all want anyway. But here is the cool part. Special type, regular. Do I want it to be like in a sight reading mode, or do I want it to be memorization? Well, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this, I want the kids to have this memorized so they feel comfortable soloing. So memorization, hit add, and they are fully ready to go. Now I'm going to log out. And I also highly recommend that for, you have your user account and as a teacher, you're the site administrator, but I always create a student account, and I just put Sikes student, and I have a different password. I always have a student account that I run, and then I add myself to all the classes so that every time I do an assignment, especially when I'm learning, then I can kind of log in and I can always see it from the student perspective as well. And now that I'm logged in, I need to determine, well, what class? Because I'm logged into all of my own classes, right? But we did this in the test class. So when I click test, there's that Kansas City Riff Scale. Overview, hit click. And now I'm going to open in PracticeFirst. And now I've got it right there. But let's say I play trumpet. So I'm going to select trumpet. And now when I hit record, I get the click off. And right now I'm supposed to be playing that scale memorized. And it tells me I played a few wrong notes. That was very nice of them to say just a few. So that is kind of like the process from creating content all the way through to creating assignment and logging in and having a student complete it. And sometimes you might not want to use like the whole notation software, and you still want the kids to perform something. So if Mike will allow me a few minutes, can I cover one more item?
Absolutely, go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to log out again, and I'm going to log back in as a teacher, and I'm going to go back and use well, let me go to my class first. I'm going to do the test class right here. And I'm going to create assignment. And the whole point of the assignment is I want the kids to play along with an audio track. Real simple. So I'm going to hit task. And let's make believe this is for my guitar class. And I want them to play the chords to Jambalaya. All right. I am not going to use MusicFirst software. I want them to record audio. So I'm going to click there. I can, deliver any description that I want. Using your C and G chord, play a simple strumming pattern along with the recording. Again, I'll make an assignment. We'll make it due Friday. Visible to all, worth 10 points. Everything's 10 points. Hit create task. And again, I'm not finished yet. I have to configure that recorder now. Click on that. And now, do I want to enable the metronome for this task? I do not. Do I want to enable audio for upload to task? I do not, because the kids are going to be playing along with the recording. I do want to choose a backing track. Choose File, hit Miscellaneous here, and there is a file. Now I created this. You can listen to it for to make sure it works. So that file was created with iReal Pro, which is a great app for iPhones and iPads. I don't know if it's on the other platforms or not, but I'll commonly put together chord changes. It's just like Band in the Box, only I think it's a little bit more sophisticated. And I'll export that audio file, and then I can play in there or put it in here. And then once I upload it, then the students, when they log into their assignment, they'll know, all right, I click on this, and they will hear the clicks, because the clicks come from that iReal Pro, like you just heard. And then they can play along and strum along, and then submit the recording to me. Again, it's just another way for the kids to play along with recording, a real quick snapshot of how they're performing or how they're playing. That's an alternative to using some of the notation or something in PracticeFirst. All right. And I think, Mike, that pretty much covers, I think, everything that I have. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, so one of the teachers that's on here was talking about talking about backing track options, specifically when you were kind of going through the advanced options, and they were asking, can you load an accompaniment, or does it just play the written notation? And I'll answer initially, and then I'll just kind of let you kind of feed off of that. But the program, if you're playing backing tracks, the software is also going to be hearing that backing track. So the quality of the assessment is going to be a little bit not as authentic. Now they could wear earbuds and that could help out as well. But that's one consideration. The other is that if you're doing the assessment and you want to have the backing track, personally, I think having the real audio, doing it from like you just showed with a record audio task instead of in PracticeFirst, it kind of depends on what do you want as a teacher is kind of the guiding principle there. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I usually do the audio play along. That's how I usually do it. I don't do it through the PracticeFirst that often. In fact, I don't think I've ever done it because the method I just showed seems to be easier. Plus, the quality of the accompaniment is better. I've used that assignment quite a bit, not just what you saw with the jambalaya, but if I have a publisher's recording of a concert band piece, I uploaded that. And then if a student, let's say they miss a performance for whatever reason, and I've allowed them to make up a performance, I can upload those publisher recordings and additional assignments and say, look, your makeup assignment is play along with these recordings. And then afterwards, do a reflection about how you think you did. So especially to navigate through that type of assignment, I feel that the way I just demonstrated jambalaya is probably the quickest way to get that.
The other thing about that too is, back in the day, with classic smart music, they used to have that functionality where you could slow down the MP3. Just as a point of clarification, this audio recorder doesn't have the built-in ability to slow down. However, there are free websites that you can search for that have that ability to slow down the MP3, that then you can use that as an upload, just as an FYI. So there was one other question. Someone was asking about other ways to create XML files outside of Finale. Absolutely. So if no matter what notation program you use, most of the major notation programs, whether it's Finale, Sibelius, Flat, Musescore, Noteflight, Dorico, all of those different notation programs, whatever you are comfortable as a teacher, absolutely use that. And then most of those programs will have under the file export as music XML. So I would definitely say that is definitely an option there. And then someone also mentioned in here, I've layered publishers' recordings with a click track in Pro Tools and then altered the tempo to give the kids. Yep, exactly. So that was kind of what we were talking about. Are there any other questions about any of the stuff that Ron shared today? I'll just give him a minute here. I love the blues hoodie there, Ron.
Yeah, let's go Blues.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here on my post big victory for the Who Dat Nation here.
Oh yeah, who dat?
Yeah. So we'll see how that works out. As I say, only one team gets to walk away with a W at the end of the season. So that'll be entertaining to see. I really do appreciate everybody joining us. I've got somebody that unmuted. Did you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. When I have a quick question, I thought it was easier to talk about it.
Absolutely.
When you set a certain number of limits, let's say we want them to play the B flat scale, but you have 5 attempts to do it. One problem we've had is like my kids they're not happy with the 5th one and they forget to turn it in, and then I can't send it back to them.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's happened with you, or do you have a workaround for that?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron. Have you utilized the maximum number of attempts? Do you use that functionality in PracticeFirst?
I haven't. I've only I allow the kids to have unlimited attempts, because at that point, I try to remove myself out of the equation as much as possible. Again, using the sports reference, like if you notice the referee in the game, then the referee's not very good. So it's like if I'm always interjecting, then I try not to do so much. So I let the kids go look, if you want to try 154,000 times, as long as you're happy with that final submission, then that's what you're going to be happy with. So I have, for that philosophical reason, I haven't had any limit on attempts.
Yeah, I do that for everything except for just I assign one scale per quarter.
Yeah.
And especially right now, because we don't have like the concert performance. So, but maybe, I mean, mostly philosophically, I totally agree with you, and maybe I'll just do that from now on.
Well, and Guy, just so that you're aware, there is a way that you can reuse that assignment or clear the submission. So if the student submitted something, but if they've maxed out on the number of attempts, you can always reuse that assignment and assign it to just that individual student. Like Ron was talking about, the ability to assign to a group or individual students. So you could do that if you've got that option. If you're not sure how to do it, check out the user guide. If that doesn't answer the question, email support@musicfirst.com and explain what you're trying to do, and they'll walk you through it too.
And if I could say, going back to the clear submission, I've used that function a lot, because even though I give them unlimited attempts, I'll still have the kid go, "Hey, Mr. Sikes, like, I wasn't happy with that. Can you send it back to me?" "Yes, I will," and I'll send it back to them. Also, the user groups, like if you have a user group that you use all the time, like early on, I separated my percussion from the rest of the band for their different assignments. But it doesn't even have to be that involved. Like sometimes when it says assignment, you just unclick the button and type in a kid's name or two, and it'll go right to them. So that's a pretty quick function too.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Another question that was asked was more on the vocal side, and was talking about, would you recommend notating out the piano accompaniment for choir folks? And then if there is an instrumental interlude, does the singer just wait, or however many measures are there? So in terms of the second portion of that question, I would say, utilize that ability to mark the sections like Ron was talking about. So if you wanted them to listen and know this is how long I have to wait for my entrance, great, you've got it there. If not, then you can really differentiate and set that assignment up the way that you want. Ron, do you have any feedback about notating piano accompaniments?
I haven't done a lot of that in PracticeFirst or prepare for PracticeFirst.
Okay.
I haven't done a lot of that.
Yeah, I would say, we've also got that Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, you can find the MusicFirst Teachers group, and that's a great spot where you can kind of ask the collective, hive mind, if you will, for ideas and suggestions too. Cool. Anybody else with any other questions? All right. Otherwise, Ron, thanks again for sharing your insights here. I did record this, so if anybody wants to get access to this, by all means, just email me. Otherwise, if you wanted to follow up, you can always email me, and I can relay stuff over to Ron if you had very specific questions. And thanks again, everybody, for your time. Hopefully, you gained at least one nugget of information on how to, kind of work with the kids and keep them engaged. And thanks again for everybody joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for hanging out with us. And again, I'm on the MusicFirst Facebook page a lot, so hope to interact with you all there as well.
All right, take care, everybody. Have a good night.